Step aside. This jet is not for people like you. Wait outside." The words snapped through the morning air like a whip. At the base of the airplane stairs, every head turned. A flight attendant, uniform pressed and voice sharp, jabbed her finger toward a black woman in a captain's uniform. The woman did not flinch, her shoulders held steady, her gaze unshaken. Around them, passengers froze mid-step, phones already raised, recording what they could not believe. This was no mix-up. It was humiliation made public, and it had just begun. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we are glad you are here. Now, back to our captain. The uniform fit her perfectly. Gold stripes at her cuffs, wings pinned against her chest. Yet the crew treated her like an intruder. Two male security officers moved in close, one whispering, "She looks suspicious." Their presence turned the air heavy, a blockade at the foot of the stairs. The crowd murmured. A woman's voice broke the silence, hushed but clear enough for nearby ears. "Isn't that the captain's uniform?" Still, no one intervened. The pilot spoke at last, calm and measured. "I belong here." 4 words, not shouted but steady, carrying more weight than the accusations hurled her way. The attendant smirked, raising her voice for the crowd. "Forged uniform. No black woman commands this aircraft. Call security now." Gasps rippled across the tarmac. Phones tilted higher. The woman in uniform stood anchored to the spot, not moving, not blinking. She had heard this tone before, years earlier in smaller rooms, in colder voices. But this was different. This was not just an insult. This was an assault on her very right to exist in the space she had earned. The storm was coming, and she was ready to meet it head-on. The air around the jet stairs grew heavier with every second. The flight attendant's voice sliced through the crowd again, sharper this time, meant to humiliate not just the woman in uniform, but every person who dared to watch. "She forged that outfit. No black woman flies this aircraft. Not today, not ever." Her finger jabbed forward once more, trembling not from fear but from fury. 2 security officers closed in, shoulders squared, blocking the captain from moving a single step closer to her own plane. One leaned toward the other, whispering words meant to be hidden but loud enough for microphones on nearby phones to capture. "She looks suspicious. She should be detained." His partner nodded, gripping his radio with a hand that trembled between duty and bias. The passengers on the tarmac stirred uneasily. A young woman whispered, "That looks like a captain's rank." A man beside her raised his phone higher, filming every moment. Another muttered, "If she is not the pilot, why are they so afraid of her standing here?" Their questions hung in the air unanswered, drowned out by the attendant's escalating shouts. The captain remained rooted, her back straight, her eyes steady. She did not argue. She did not beg. Her silence was louder than the accusations. But the restraint only fueled the crowd of staff. The attendant stepped closer, her tone dripping with disdain. "People like you do not command. You obey." Gasps broke out from the passengers. Someone near the back whispered, "This is going online. Millions will see this." Phones shifted in unison like 100 watchful eyes. The captain's lips finally parted. Her voice was low, deliberate, meant to carry without rising. "You called me a fraud in front of witnesses. Remember those words." The lead security officer snapped. "Remove her ID badge. Now." His hand shot forward, fingers brushing against the polished emblem pinned to her chest. He ripped it free with a sharp motion and tossed it onto the concrete, where it skidded and landed face down. "You do not belong in this airline," he barked. "Step back before you are detained." The insult was not in the gesture, but in the intent. Stripping away her badge was meant to erase her identity. Yet she did not bend. She stood taller, as if the weight of history anchored her against the storm. For a heartbeat, the entire crowd seemed to hold its breath. Then the recording lights blinked brighter, and the world was watching. The badge lay on the ground, metal catching the sun like a fallen star. A few passengers gasped, the sound sharp in the heavy silence. One man whispered, "That is theft." Another voice rose from the crowd, trembling with anger. "She is in uniform. That is a captain's uniform." Phones shifted higher, recording every detail as if the truth needed as many witnesses as possible. The flight attendant smirked, emboldened by the silence of her own colleagues. She raised her voice, loud enough for the entire boarding area to hear. "She does not belong here. She is playing dress-up in stolen clothes. Call federal security." The words rippled outward, cutting through every corner of the tarmac. The accusation was not just about one woman. It was about every person who had ever been told they did not belong. The captain did not bend down to retrieve her badge. She let it stay where it had fallen, her silence heavier than the insults thrown at her. A memory flickered in her mind. Years earlier, she was 23, fresh out of flight school, walking into her first interview. The recruiter had looked at her resume, then at her skin, and said, "You do not fit the image of a pilot." That sentence had lived in her bones ever since. And here it was again, repeated in new words, different voices, but the same intent. A passenger near the back stepped forward. He was middle-aged, wearing a navy blazer. His voice shook as he spoke, but he did not lower it. "You cannot treat her like this. She has not raised her voice once." The attendant turned on him sharply. "Mind your own business, or you will miss this flight." The security officer lifted his radio, pressing the button with a force that revealed more fear than authority. "Dispatch, we have an unauthorized individual attempting to board in a captain's uniform. Possible fraud. Requesting immediate backup." His words carried across the open space, broadcast for every phone to capture. The captain's eyes narrowed, not with rage but with resolve. She did not reach for the badge. She did not defend her uniform. Instead, she took out her phone and dialed a single number. When the call connected, her words were calm, clipped, unshaken. "Protocol 7, activate now." "Oh." On the other end, a voice answered instantly, steady and precise. "Confirmed, Captain. The system is live." The crowd buzzed. Someone whispered, "She called her captain." Another murmured, "Wait, does she really command this flight?" Confusion rippled through the passengers, but the crew held their hostile stance, faces tight with disbelief. The captain lifted her chin, her voice carried like steel across the tarmac. "Every word you have spoken is being logged, every insult is being recorded, and soon, every lie will answer to the truth." The air tightened. The storm was no longer approaching, it was already here. The tarmac had turned into a stage, and every phone lens was a spotlight. The passengers were no longer quiet onlookers. They were whispering, shifting, pointing, their voices layering into a restless hum. One woman raised her voice, trembling but clear. "If she is not the captain, why are they so desperate to keep her out?" The question echoed louder than any insult. The flight attendant snapped back, face flushed, eyes flashing. "Because frauds belong in custody, not in cockpits. People like her think they can cheat their way into power. Not today." The venom in her words sliced through the crowd, and gasps followed, sharp and outraged. A teenager near the front muttered to his mother, "That is racism, plain and simple." His mother gripped his shoulder but did not tell him to be quiet. The security officers squared their shoulders, closing ranks. One stepped forward, his voice firm, though his tone betrayed unease. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to be here. Step back now or you will be forcibly removed." He reached for her arm. Cameras zoomed closer. Every breath in the crowd seemed to pause. The captain stood immovable, a statue of quiet defiance. She did not pull away, did not raise her hands. Her voice was steady, almost calm. "Touch me again and you will answer not to me but to the board that signs your checks." The officer froze mid-motion, his hand inches from her sleeve. He hesitated, then stepped back half a pace. The crowd murmured louder. A young man filming whispered into his microphone, "She is not bluffing. Look at her face." The flight attendant, now rattled, tried to regain control. She shouted, "This is a circus. She is a liar in costume. She will never fly this plane." Her voice cracked on the final word, but she held her chin high, as if pride could disguise fear. The captain's eyes sharpened. Her words cut deliberate and precise. "You tried to strip me of my name. You tried to erase my rank, but you cannot erase the truth. I am the captain of this flight, and soon every person here will know it." The hum of the crowd rose into a wave. Phones recorded, passengers whispered to each other, and even a few clapped softly, defiant against the cruelty unfolding before them. A man in a business suit shook his head and said aloud, "This is beyond protocol. This is prejudice." The captain's phone buzzed once in her hand. She lifted it to her ear. The voice of her assistant came through, unwavering. "Captain Faze, 2 of Protocol 7 has been activated. Every incident is logged. Corporate oversight is already watching live. The captain lowered the phone slowly, her gaze locked on the trembling crew. The balance of power had begun to shift, and the air carried it like a storm about to break. The boarding area pulsed with tension, every second stretching longer than the last. Passengers leaned against the railings, their phones raised high, capturing what no advertisement could ever erase from the airline's image. Whispers turned into open conversations. She said Protocol 7. What does that mean? Another voice answered. It means the crew messed with the wrong woman. The flight attendant tried to hold her ground, but her mask of authority had begun to crack. Her voice rose again, desperate and shrill. She is lying. She cannot prove anything. She is not even in our system. She turned sharply to the security officers, her words spitting like sparks. Arrest her now. Remove her from the premises before she makes us all look like fools. The lead officer adjusted his stance, but his eyes betrayed doubt. The passenger crowd had shifted, no longer neutral observers. They were witnesses. One elderly man pointed with a trembling hand. She is calm. She has not resisted once. Why are you all yelling at her? His voice broke the wall of silence that had kept so many quiet. A young woman near the front clutched her phone, live streaming. They tore her badge off. They called her a fraud. This is happening in real time. Share this now. Her words reached thousands within minutes. Comments scrolled rapidly on her screen, flooding with outrage and support. The captain did not react to the noise around her. She stood as if anchored, every movement measured, every breath steady. Her silence was not weakness, it was command. At last, she spoke again, her tone sharper than steel. You accused me without evidence. You insulted me without hesitation. And now, you will face the truth without escape. Her phone buzzed once more. She pressed it to her ear, listening, then nodded. The assistant's voice carried into the moment, clear and firm. Captain, confirmation complete. Corporate security has verified your identity. They are monitoring every second of this confrontation. The order stands by your authority. A ripple of shock ran through the passengers. Murmurs became declarations. She really is the captain. They tried to deny her, but she outranks all of them. A man in a gray suit clapped once, slowly, defiantly, and others followed until the clapping spread like fire. The flight attendant's face drained of color. She stammered, "That is impossible. You are nothing but a fraud with a story." But even as the words left her lips, her voice wavered. The ground beneath her authority was crumbling. The captain lowered her phone, lifted her chin, and let her words carry to the farthest passenger on the tarmac. You wanted to make a scene. Now the world is watching, and I promise you, this flight will not leave with liars in command. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps, the sound rolling like thunder across the boarding gate. The storm had shifted, and it was no longer against the captain. It was against those who had tried to erase her. The clapping spread through the boarding gate like a spark racing across dry ground. For the first time, the balance tilted, and it was not in favor of the crew. Passengers were not just filming anymore. They were speaking, their voices rising one by one until the noise was impossible to ignore. A middle-aged man in a business coat stepped forward, his tone sharp. You cannot throw her out for existing. She showed more discipline in silence than all of you did in shouting. His words struck the crowd like a gavel, a judgment passed in public. The flight attendant's jaw tightened. Her voice snapped like a whip. Enough! All of you are being deceived. She is no pilot. She is a criminal, and if you do not move aside, you will be complicit. Gasps and angry murmurs rippled through the passengers. A teenager near the railing shouted back, his phone still streaming. She is not the one committing a crime. You ripped her badge off. You lied about her identity. That is the crime. The lead security officer raised his radio again, clinging to his fading authority. Dispatch, we need immediate backup. Escalation level red. His words echoed across the gate, but the tremor in his voice revealed the crack in his control. The captain did not move. She let the chaos swirl around her like wind against a mountain. Then, with deliberate calm, she spoke. You are not protecting this airline. You are destroying it, and when this is over, you will answer for every word. The phones captured her steady voice. It carried above the noise, cutting through confusion with clarity. For a moment, Even the jeers from the crew fell silent. From the crowd, a younger employee in a trainee uniform hesitated, then stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her words landed with force. I saw her name in the system. She is listed as captain for this flight. You cannot deny what is true. All eyes turned. The attendant's face flushed crimson. Stay out of this or you will lose your job. But the trainee did not retreat. She squared her shoulders, voice firmer now. I would rather lose my job than lie for you. She belongs here. The passengers erupted with shouts of agreement. A woman near the back yelled, "We believe her." Another man lifted his phone and declared, "The truth is on record." The attendant tried to retake control, her words desperate. "You are all being manipulated. Look at her. Does she look like a captain to you?" The captain's reply was sharp, immediate, unforgettable. Dignity does not come with your permission. Authority does not wait for your approval. I am the captain because I earned it, and no insult can erase that. The cheers rolled louder, the crowd fully awake now. The flight crew, once so sure of their power, stood cornered in the very space they thought they controlled. The storm was no longer on the horizon. It was breaking over them, unstoppable. The crowd's roar had not yet faded when the flight attendant crossed the final line. Her eyes burned with panic, her voice shrill enough to pierce the air. "Seize her! Strip her of everything! She is a danger to this airline and to every passenger here." The lead security officer lunged forward. His hand gripped the captain's arm, twisting hard as if force could erase truth. Gasps tore through the crowd, sharp and horrified. The captain did not cry out. She stood like stone, her face unbroken, her silence louder than any scream. The badge on the ground had been insult enough. But now, this was more than humiliation. It was an assault carried out in full view of witnesses, in full defiance of reason. A passenger's voice rang out, raw with outrage. "Let her go! You cannot touch her like that!" Another shouted. "We are recording everything!" Dozens of phones tilted higher, red lights flashing like 100 watchful eyes. The captain's phone remained steady in her free hand. She lifted it toward her lips, her voice calm and commanding. "Escalate to Phase 3. Document physical assault. Alert corporate security and legal immediately." On the other end, her assistant's voice came crisp and certain. "Logged. Corporate is on the line. The legal team is standing by. Every second is being broadcast internally." The officer hesitated, grip loosening as if the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on him. Still, pride chained him to defiance. "You are under detention until verification is complete." The captain turned her head slowly, her gaze locking on him like steel. Her voice carried across the gate, unwavering. "You just detained your commanding officer, and you did it in front of the world." A wave of murmurs rippled through the passengers. Someone whispered, "She said commanding officer." Another voice rose louder, "She is not bluffing. She is in charge here." The trainee who had spoken earlier stepped forward again, her voice cracking but resolute. "She is telling the truth." Her name was on the roster. I saw it. She is the captain of this flight. The crowd erupted. Cheers clashed with shouts of disbelief, but the tide was turning. The passengers were no longer just filming. They were defending. A man in a gray hat pushed closer to the rail, his voice booming. "You put your hands on a black woman in uniform. That is not security. That is bigotry." The flight attendant's voice cracked under the pressure. "Stop listening to her. She is a fraud. She is nothing." The captain finally spoke, her words sharp as a blade, final as a gavel. "You mistook silence for weakness. That was your last mistake." The crowd roared in agreement, a wall of sound rising against the crew. And in that moment, the entire boarding gate no longer belonged to the airline staff. It belonged to the captain they had tried to erase. The roar of the passengers rolled like thunder, but the captain's voice cut through it with surgical precision. She lifted her phone again, her tone measured, unshaken. "Activate Phase 4. Confirm executive authority. Lock personnel access for all hostile staff." The response came within seconds, clear in her earpiece, steady as stone. "Confirmed, Captain. Executive override engaged. Their credentials will fail immediately. Notifications are logged." At that exact moment, the lead security officer reached for his radio again, only to hear a dull buzz. His access code failed. He tried once more, pressing harder, but the red light blinked, refusing him. Confusion flickered across his face, breaking the mask of authority he had worn like armor. The passengers caught it, and whispers shot through the crowd. His badge is dead. She did that. The flight attendant's confidence faltered, but desperation clawed at her. She pointed at the captain, her hand trembling. She is hacking the system. None of this is real. Do not believe her. But her words landed weak, drowned out by the tide of disbelief crashing against her. A businessman in a navy suit spoke firmly, his voice rising above the noise. She warned you. She said every word was being logged, and now it is. You are finished. His declaration was met with a surge of clapping, louder this time, not hesitant, but unified. The captain remained still, her posture unbroken, her face calm. She did not need to raise her voice. She simply let the silence after the applause carry her power. Then she spoke, low but firm. I gave you every chance to correct yourselves. Instead, you chose humiliation, violence, and lies. That choice has consequences. The trainee stood closer now, no longer trembling. Her voice was stronger, almost fierce. She is the captain, she owns this authority, and you tried to destroy her for nothing but prejudice. The passengers erupted again, their voices now a tide that could not be silenced. The second security officer, younger and visibly shaken, finally stepped back. His words came quietly, almost ashamed. I think she is telling the truth. The flight attendant spun toward him, fury twisting her face. Do not you dare betray this crew. She is a liar. She is nothing. But her shrill words only revealed her unraveling grip. The captain lifted her chin, eyes locked on the trembling crew. She spoke into the chaos, her words etched with finality. I am not nothing. I am the captain of this flight. I am the authority you tried to erase, and you will answer for every second of this abuse. The crowd's cheer crashed like a wave. The once quiet boarding area had become a courtroom, a stage, and a reckoning all at once. The verdict was already clear, and it was not in favor of the crew. The boarding gate was no longer a place of departure. It had transformed into a chamber of truth. Every passenger stood as witness, their phones raised like torches, their voices refusing to be silenced. The crew who once commanded the space now looked cornered, every ounce of authority slipping away. The captain stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and the trembling attendant. Her voice carried with the gravity of judgment. You tried to strip me of my rank. You tried to erase my presence. But you forgot the one fact you cannot control. I am the commanding officer of this aircraft, and you just attempted to detain your superior. Gasps cut through the crowd. A man near the front whispered, Superior. She said superior. Another passenger added louder, She is the one in charge here. She outranks all of them. The whispers turned into cheers, and the cheers rolled into chants. Let her fly. Let her fly. The flight attendant's face drained of color, but her pride pushed her into denial. She shouted above the noise, her words cracking. She is lying. This is all staged. None of this is real. But her defiance shattered as the captain raised her phone once more. Her assistant's voice echoed through the speaker, calm and deliberate. Captain, confirmation is complete. Your status as commanding officer and executive authority of this airline is publicly verified. Corporate oversight is live and watching. Every credential of the hostile staff has been revoked. The words landed like hammer blows. The lead security officer instinctively reached for his badge again. It glowed red, lifeless. His partner tried his phone, but the login failed. Panic spread across their faces, plain for every passenger to see. The trainee who had spoken before stepped forward once more, her voice steady. She told you. She warned you. And now the system proves her right. The crowd roared in agreement. A woman shouted, She is the captain! Another man yelled, And they tried to throw her out! The captain's eyes never left the attendant. Her tone sharpened, precise as a blade. You called me a fraud in front of hundreds. You tore my badge from my chest. You ordered men to put their hands on me, and now you will answer for it. The attendant tried to speak, but her words died in her throat. Her authority had collapsed under the weight of truth. The passengers surged with applause, their cheers echoing like thunder across the gate. The captain stood in the center, unshaken, unbroken, her silence now more powerful than any speech. The storm had broken wide open, and the world was watching. The next move was not hers to make. It was already made. The collapse of authority rippled through the crew like a wave crashing against a crumbling wall. Their badges glowed red, their radios buzzed useless, their access denied in real time. The passengers saw everything, and their voices surged louder. The boarding gate, once ruled by silence, had turned into a storm of outrage and vindication. The flight attendant stumbled backward, her confidence evaporating. Her hands trembled as she tried to bark another order. "Do not listen to her. She is manipulating all of you. She is dangerous." But the words fell flat, thin echoes against the roar of the crowd. A passenger with silver hair stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "Dangerous is putting your hands on a black woman in uniform and calling it policy. Dangerous is pretending your prejudice is procedure." Applause broke out, not polite but furious, a wall of sound that shook the already crumbling control of the crew. The captain did not need to raise her voice. She let the noise settle, then spoke with calm precision. "This is no longer your gate. This is no longer your plane. Every action you took today is recorded, verified, and witnessed. You are finished." Her phone chimed again, the assistant's voice carrying through the small speaker for all to hear. "Captain, corporate has confirmed termination. The flight attendant and both security officers are officially locked out of the airline system. Their employment is revoked effective immediately." The announcement struck like lightning. The flight attendant's face collapsed into shock, her mouth opening but no sound emerging. The lead officer dropped his useless radio to the ground, the metallic clatter echoing his defeat. The second officer looked at the captain with wide eyes, whispering, "What have we done?" The passengers erupted into cheers. Phones lifted higher, capturing every second of justice unfolding live. A teenager near the front shouted, "They just got fired in front of everyone." A man beside him laughed with disbelief. "I have flown for 30 years. I have never seen justice delivered this fast." The captain remained steady, her uniform marked by dignity, her silence more commanding than the chaos around her. She raised her eyes to the passengers and spoke with quiet strength. "You stood witness when they tried to erase me. Now you stand witness as they erase themselves. This is not just about me. It is about every person who has ever been told they do not belong." The crowd clapped and cheered, their voices carrying across the runway. The humiliation had been turned inside out, and the very crew who had wielded prejudice like a weapon were left powerless in its shadow. The truth was undeniable now. The captain had revealed who she was, and the world had chosen to believe her. The boarding gate thundered with applause, the sound rising like a tidal wave that refused to be stopped. Cameras flashed, phones streamed live, and the world outside the airport was now watching with relentless focus. The crew who once barked orders stood frozen, their voices silenced by their own collapse. The captain turned her gaze to the security officers first. Her words were not shouted, but each syllable landed with the weight of a verdict. "You tore my badge from my chest. You put your hands on me as if authority was yours to define. Effective immediately, you are barred from this airline, from its planes, and from every corridor that bears its name." Their badges glowed red once more, the final confirmation. The lead officer clenched his fists, but no words came. His partner shook his head, shoulders slumping under the reality of public disgrace. Then the captain turned to the attendant. The crowd hushed, sensing the gravity of what was coming. Her eyes locked on the woman who had dared to reduce her existence to a lie. "You called me nothing. You told me to wait outside my own aircraft. You humiliated me in front of witnesses. That ends now. You are terminated, stripped of access, and escorted from this airline permanently." The assistant's voice echoed from the captain's phone, crisp and final. "Termination confirmed. Access revoked. Legal record filed." The attendant staggered back a step, her face drained of all color. She reached for her badge as if clinging to the last remnant of control, but the device in her hand buzzed and blinked red before dying completely. A ripple of gasps swept through the passengers. One woman shouted, "She just lost her job right here." Another voice rose, full of satisfaction. "That is justice. That is accountability." The crowd erupted in cheers again, louder than before, their energy fueling the moment of reckoning. The captain stood tall, unflinching in the storm she herself had turned. Her words rang out, steady and deliberate. "This plane belongs to truth. This flight belongs to dignity. And no one who tried to erase those things will ever board it again." The passengers clapped, some even stomping against the floor, their voices a chorus that drowned the silence of the disgraced crew. The atmosphere was electric, charged with both outrage and relief, as if history itself had shifted in the space of minutes. The once powerful staff had been reduced to bystanders, their authority shattered, their credibility gone. They had tried to cast the captain out, but instead they had cast themselves into ruin. The gate no longer belonged to them. It belonged to her. The boarding gate was silent for a heartbeat, as if the world itself paused to absorb what had just happened. Then the silence broke into a tidal wave of applause, cheers echoing through every corner of the terminal. Strangers clapped for her. Children waved. Even the skeptical few lowered their phones, faces softened by the undeniable truth. The disgraced crew stood pale and trembling, their uniforms suddenly nothing more than fabric. They had no power left, no control, no dignity. The very tools they once used to belittle others had been stripped from them, not by anger but by undeniable authority. The captain lifted her chin, her voice carrying above the roar, calm but unyielding. "You tried to erase me with prejudice. You tried to bury me under humiliation, but I am not your illusion. I am not your fraud. I am the captain of this flight, and the owner of the company that employs you. And today, you have witnessed what happens when truth refuses to be silent." Her words fell into the crowd like sparks, igniting a deeper cheer. Passengers raised their phones higher, chanting her title, "Captain, Captain, Captain." The sound rolled through the gate, unstoppable and victorious. The flight attendant stumbled backward, unable to meet her eyes. The officers stared at the ground, their shoulders hunched under the weight of disgrace. They had been exposed, undone not by force but by the very silence they mistook for weakness. The captain bent slowly, retrieving the badge they had thrown to the floor. She held it up, not as a symbol reclaimed, but as proof of what could not be erased. The sun caught the polished metal, and for a moment it gleamed brighter than any spotlight. She turned toward the passengers, her gaze sweeping across the witnesses who had stood with her. Her voice softened, but every word carried. Justice does not always shout. Sometimes it stands still. Sometimes it waits. And when the moment comes, it does not need permission. It simply arrives. Oh. The passengers erupted once more, some with tears in their eyes, others raising fists in solidarity. One man shouted, "Fly us, Captain!" A woman added, "We trust you." Their faith was the verdict that mattered most. The captain clipped her badge back onto her uniform, the emblem resting where it belonged. She took a steady breath, her dignity intact, her authority undeniable. Her final words sealed the moment like a gavel striking true. "I do not need to film my justice. I am the result of it." And with that, she turned toward the stairs, walking past the powerless crew. The passengers parted to let her through, their applause following her like a rising tide. The storm was over. The sky was hers,